Well, hey, life groups, it's great that we can dig in again to this middle section of the book of Acts that we're calling the story of. And today, from the middle of Acts chapter 9 through into Acts chapter 11, we can look at the story of Peter, one of the first original disciples of Jesus, who now was one of the major church leaders, one of the apostles of the first century church. And the story of Peter is not just a story of changing paradigms, changing what it means to be a faithful follower of God, although there's certainly some of that in there. It's a story of risk and ultimately a story of what the purpose of a faith community is. Because Peter would have assumed at first in this early Christian church in Jerusalem and in Judea and Samaria, predominantly of Jewish converts to Christianity, that this was a place for people of Jewish background, kind of God's called out special people to be part of the church. And then all of a sudden his world was turned upside down and he was called through a vision of God and through an invitation of a Gentile to go and visit Cornelius and to bring the message of Jesus to the Gentiles. To which he did, and to which the Holy Spirit showed up in equal amazement and strength. And, the real narrative tension is when Peter brings that news back to the church. Will it be accepted, and will Peter be accepted, and will he actually be included, even though he's contaminated himself by going and being with Gentiles? And yet the surprising twist of the story of Peter is that through all of that sensitivity and appreciation of the activity of God, the first century church of Jewish background was able to see God in it and accepted these Gentiles not into their church, but as the church. And I think the reason they did is because they remembered the words of Jesus and the vision for his church and the ever-expanding way in which he intended the church to spread and the message of his love and his life change to be shared with others. And so the question for us today, both personally and together as groups and as a faith community, is the degree to which we live our lives according to that vision. Or maybe the degree to which we allow ourselves to drift from that vision, to take that arrows out vision and kind of turn it inward and become insular and become more over-focused on deepening or strengthening our faith or strengthening our own community with an eye on only ourselves, missing the plot and vision that Jesus would be working in ever-expanding kinds of ways. And so, among other things that I'm sure you'll talk about as a life group, I threw out some questions in the actual message itself, wondering things like the degree to which we actually create space to hear from God and realign ourselves regularly with his ever-expanding vision. Questions like in what ways we wish for more of God ourselves, in ways that might distract us from embracing that ever-expanding vision. Questions about our comfort zone. It would be neat to share with one another in an environment like a life group how we would define our comfort zone and where we might find God drawing us out of our comfort zones to share his life and love more generously and liberally. And then to get really practical, maybe even to pray for the people that God has placed in each of our lives with whom we can share Jesus' love and life-changing message, and just ask each other and maybe commit practically in an accountable way how we can, in the weeks to come, invest in deepening and strengthening those relationships. At the end of the day, I think the characters of the church in Acts chapter 9, 10, and 11, we're probably hearing the voice of Jesus from Acts chapter 1 when he said, when the Holy Spirit comes on you, you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, through Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And they were able to appreciate his ever-expanding vision. And I hope we, in the story of Peter, can remember Jesus' words in Matthew 16, 18, when he actually said to Peter, he was going to change his name from Simon to Peter and said, on this rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not overpower it. So that you and I can appreciate, and us together can appreciate, that to follow Jesus and be his church is not just about being his church, but it's about building his church and entering into his ever-expanding vision, where the bottom line and downbeat for each of us personally and us together as a family are those four words where to be part of the church and to follow Jesus, it's not about us. So I wish you a great conversation, pursuing and focusing on Jesus' vision and on Jesus himself. Blessings as you have a great conversation as a life group.